We are here, folks. Episode 153 of the HiTech Podcast, starting season 7 with a brand new look.
Oh, wow. Look at it. It's so pretty. If you're listening to just the audio and you have no idea what's going on, again, there is a video platform you should go check out after you listen to this in your car or whatever you're doing. Don't watch the video while you're in the car. Don't do that. That's
Robin,
not safe.
Put the phone down.
Yeah, put the phone down. But when you get to a safe, non-moving place, go check out the video and see the cool new look. The HiTech Podcast looks new.
It's this is Will and Josh, the same podcast hosts, with an all-new podcast look.
An all-new vibe. Look at us.
We're back, stronger than ever. It has been a little bit of a month off. We've gone dark so that we can release all of the new brand and look and refreshy things that we've done. I'm going to let those trail at the bottom of the screen for a little bit. So if you're not familiar with us, thanks for joining us. This is your first episode. Wow, I don't know why you've managed to stumble on 153 as the first episode to listen to, but most of you are probably joining us from before. And if you go over to any of our socials right now, which are typically at HiTech Podcast, right? That's Twitter or X. That's YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, some of those. Some of them are HiTech Pod. All right, forgive us, but we've got both. Or if you head over to our website, hitechpod.us, all of these things have been refreshed. So, Robin, pull over, put the phone down, then pick it up, and you can go on the internet and begin to...
I like how Robin's always the person we talk to. That's the only person we have a live conversation with.
I think the conversations have happened before where she says she listens while she's driving to work.
Yes, no, it 100% does. Yeah,
that's where it's come up.
Yeah.
But Josh, this is holy smokes. It's all live, right? They can go. Where can they go? They can go everywhere.
Yeah, they go everywhere. I mean, all the places you just said. I don't feel like I need to rehash that. No, you can check us out and all. And I do want to specify everywhere. So a couple things. This episode is going to be a little bit different than our normal episodes. Normal episodes, well, it's going to be a little different because we're also shifting the vibe of the podcast. We'll talk about that in a second. But the overall vibe of this episode specifically is going to be a little bit different because Will and I wanted to take some time to explain what's happening with the HiTech Podcast. We've been alluding to this a little bit. Some of you who are diehard listeners or friends of the podcast have gotten a little bit of a preview of what's going to be coming. So we wanted to give a little bit more of an explanation of specifically what's changing. But a couple other things just to note that you're going to see the changes about the HiTech Podcast. One, our look and brand looks a lot nicer. Why? Because professionals actually made it this time, not me and Will on the fly.
Well, while we're saying that, we'll just do one quick freebie, easy up on the screen. Head over and check out DadZiner. DadZiner is phenomenal. DadZiner is a subscription-based graphics designer who will work with you month to month at a specific rate and accomplish as much as you possibly can within his terms of service in a month. Or you can have Michael on for more than 1 month, but everything you're looking at, these visuals are all thanks to Michael's work. So head over to dadziner.com. Just a freebie, a thank you.
Yeah,
we love
not a sponsor. We in fact paid him, but we love we love what he did. Like the new logo, all the new vibe. You're gonna see across socials, new stuff coming out, new posts, new information, new content, and with all that content, you're gonna see new visuals and a new brand. And DadZiner helped us do that, so it is gonna be a very different look in there as well. We also want to mention, do we? He's our social media manager. We don't have his socials for this episode. This is what happens when we record ahead of time. Let me emphasize one thing, okay? Why we are changing and broadening our brand and discussion and what we talk about. It will still be the unfettered, the unplanned HiTech Podcast.
100%.
That is changing. That is our vibe, and we will stick with it. But you're going to see some different stuff on socials from now on. So over the years, we've done more on socials and less on socials, and it's been a little bit of a different experience from the HiTech Podcast, depending on how busy Will and I are. But we have been holding on to this one for a little bit. We're super excited. A friend of ours, Chris, is coming on as a social media manager for the HiTech Podcast. He is going to be posting stuff from all of the different socials, including Instagram and TikTok, two things that Will and I do not engage with very often. You're going to be seeing more stuff, more shorts, more content, more stuff coming from the HiTech Podcast and information there. So I encourage you, if you are not already Make sure to go follow us on any of those social platforms that you use, whether it's Twitter. I refuse to call it X. I don't care how long it's X until the URL becomes not twitter.com. Then I will fix that. But for now, they're Twitter. Okay. So on Twitter,
and
on
to briefly
Threads,
mention,
Instagram, TikTok.
like you said there, Chris Crosdale, good friend. He is our marketing guy now. I don't remember what we gave him a title of, but you can find him on a
Social
lot of
media
socials
manager.
at Macario. He's a musical artist. You can search Macario on Spotify and YouTube and listen to his music. You can see him on LinkedIn and see his wonderful work in the digital media world and marketing, etc. We have so many friends of the podcast. We love people like Dad Ziner, like Chris, who've gotten involved, who've been a part of this process, our wives, friends, Robin, Justin. These are people who have continued to motivate us over the years and have driven us to this point where we are elevating the podcast and taking it to these stages. Now, I think you're like twice in the middle of your thoughts. So I'm going to jump back off that train.
No,
I think we've thanked everebody.
Yeah, we've thanked everybody. It's like we're accepting an Academy Award for nothing. It's basically we want to thank everyone. We thank my dog. I don't have one. Anyway,
thank the dog I want to have.
Yeah. So socials experience will be different. So I encourage you go subscribe there, as well as on Spotify and YouTube is one of our other main places. We're on all the podcast platforms, which if you've listened to us before, already know you're listening to us somewhere. So we're where you're listening to us. But specifically on Spotify and YouTube, we also post video content for the podcast. Every episode's video podcast. We've been doing that now for a little over a year now, right? Doing video podcasting. I don't really remember. Anyway, it's been long enough we've been doing it. We don't remember. But we're going to be posting more stuff again. More information, more shorts, more content coming from the podcast will be posted there as well. So you want to make sure you follow us there and check out the new vibes on the website as you're looking at stuff. So as always, though, you can always email us at inbox@hitechpod.us. That has not changed. If you're curious on being on the podcast or to be a part of the podcast, you can absolutely hit us up there. And as we mentioned before, our website, HiTechPod.us, is going to have a lot of new information about the podcast, new updates about where we're at, as well as the new looks. If you want to check out the whole new vibe and whole new look, that's what you can do there. So, yeah, that's the one of the many new things we will be communicating on the HiTech Podcast today.
So, why, right? Why are we doing this? I mean,
yeah.
What are we doing? We're changing the brand.
Yeah, we should probably clarify what's actually changing. We haven't told anybody that yet.
Well. So what is that? The podcast has been an educational technology platform. Josh and I, when we started the podcast, both worked in higher education. I stopped working in higher education within like 4 months of working on the podcast, but I've stayed in learning and development. And I'm still a learning nerd, learning geek. We've gone to learning conferences together since then. And Josh and I were even talking about a project earlier tonight that's about teaching and learning that I'm stoked about. So it's not like I've ever left learning, but while Josh stayed in, Josh is now currently
as of the time this podcast will release, we will see how happy I'll be about that decision. But I am no longer in higher education, right? So my perspective is changing. I think the story goes back a little bit for both of us, back a little bit, right? So this is kind of like if you listen to the episode 1 of the HiTech Podcast, where Will and I explained why we were doing this podcast. Back then, we had way worse mics. We did not have backgrounds, and we had no clue what we were doing. Now we have like a 10% clue.
We didn't record a video either.
Yeah, we didn't record video back then. So, but it's similar because back then we talked about why we're doing the HiTech Podcast. Now we're trying to talk about why we're making this change, right? So I think first describe the change a little bit. I'll talk about this for a second, and then Will, you can jump in. Right, we've been, as Will talked about, HiTech came from this idea of higher ed technology. We originally spawned this podcast because it really happened in a conversation. We joke about it all the time. It was in Will's attic. We were trying to figure out what was going on. I was taking over the job as an instructional technologist at that point. I had no idea what I was doing. I was looking for podcasts. We couldn't find any that really talk about ed tech, specifically from a higher education model, right? And so that's kind of why the HiTech Podcast was born. We wanted to talk about ed tech from a higher education perspective. And we've been doing that for the last 3 years and talking about. But over that time, Will and I's lives have changed. Like Will said, it wasn't too far into the podcast. You went into corporate and left higher education for a lot of different reasons, but still the passion behind learning and development's always been there. Yeah. It's looked different for you, right? Over the last couple of years. Then fast forward to last year, about this, well, a little bit earlier than this time that we're currently recording. Will and I had this idea. We were like, the HiTech Podcast has been a lot of fun. We're enjoying it, but like, what if we also started a company because we're bored and we have no time on our hands? That seems
exaggeration. Fun. We almost kill ourselves.
Yeah, so let's do that. So what out of that was born Harness Tech. So you've heard us talk about harnessing technology in the podcast a lot. It's kind of a catchphrase of the HiTech Podcast, and I think encompasses a lot of Will's and I's desires behind the podcast and the other work that we do, which is helping people kind of take technology and leverage it for developing themselves, leveraging it for their business, leveraging it for education. And I think what happened is we started only thinking about it leveraging for education, and then we both started finding interests outside of education where technology and in the principles of learning, design, and development can still be incredibly helpful across the whole spectrum of where you're at, whether you're in education or you're outside education in a business or doing whatever you're doing. And so we started Harness Tech last year, which has been a wild journey over the last year. We started it, and Will, of course, finds a client like 5 seconds into starting the company. And it spawned an entire year of doing a lot of learning and development consultation outside of our regular work, where we're using tools like Articulate Storyline, and we're doing things, we're developing content that's not just an educational course at a college, but it's a training for students on things. It's stuff for professional development at corporate spaces. And we're also starting to get interested through that in what it looks like to do productivity, to run a business, to do all of those things, and how much technology and learning development and all the things we've learned in developing online courses is just as applicable to running a business well, setting up our own systems well, doing all designing things well. And so that's been our last year. We've been doing with Harness Tech. And I think that's kind of spawned the desire that was already kind of, I think you would agree, Will, brewing a little bit, which is to broaden our scope. We were starting to feel a little limited in what we were talking about to just higher education technology. And that was two things that we had a lot more interest beyond that. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And for 152 episodes, we paired a topic with a tool. We love that methodology. It's valuable. We got 152, almost 152 unique tools. There's probably like six or so duplicates, maybe 10 duplicates. So let's say 140 unique tools. But folks, there's ironically always more tools, and yet not enough tools. Like that's not a sustainable shtick. I think we will still do that to some extent. We love tech. We want to keep advocating for tech. But the other side of this that we were doing is we're going to open this up and just talk about tech tools that help anyone harness technology, right? We've got a new slogan, a little tagline we'll end this episode with. We've practiced it a few times. We love it. But it's not just about harnessing tech, right? The point of even in harnessing tech is what we can do with it and what it does for us. And we want to open that door open. Like we just want to get into more. So we're still going to be having conversations about education, having conversations about ed tech, and we're going to go further and talk about productivity tech and talk about physical tech, right? We've spent so much time on software, but dude, I could talk to you about this keyboard and the way it makes me more productive. And we could do product ads, maybe like make some money on the key. Now, I'm joking, but like when I think about the productivity that I have in my life that's built on technology, and I'm almost sad for folks who don't have that same technology or same knowledge about technology to use it. I am the help desk for my uncle, for my mom, for certain friends in my life, right? They call me when the printer won't turn on. They call me when their mouse battery dies. I'm happy to answer those calls, but there's folks who also would want to use, like a productivity mouse that has gestures and can do, key combos and can do programming and maybe fun lights. Like folks who need the simplest stuff, like how do I fix this, to how do I become faster, quicker, better at my work? We're here. We're here to help all of those folks. We don't want to be stuck or caught in any one spot, frankly. We just want to get to all high tech. That's it. That's the podcast. We're going to all HiTech for productivity, improvement.
Yeah. And we're still talking about learning and development and still talking about designing stuff. And
we're
Will and I we're still both working as instructional designers. Like it's not like we've left that field. We will definitely still have a bent towards that space. But there's a lot of other stuff we're doing. Like Will's talking about, from productivity end, from even having the experience of running a business for the last year, some of the tech that we've leveraged to do that has been an interesting conversation. And we want to have conversations with more people in the area that are doing that stuff as well. I think a lot of it comes down to, like, for Will and I, we are always two guys who are going to keep trying to kind of figure it out on our own. We're going to find ways to optimize things. We're going to find ways to make things more efficient. Like the line I like to use a lot, bringing order out of the chaos, both through how we design courses and development to how we leverage technology in spaces like that. And I think for us, what we found we like talking about is how to do that across different fields and across what you're doing. So I think whether you're a teacher or you're running a business or you're just somebody working in corporate field, trying to figure out how to do their job better and more efficiently, and be more personally productive, whatever that may be, I think you're going to find fun tidbits out of this podcast now that will be able to help you in those areas, right? It does mean we're broadening a bit. It does mean we're probably going to not focus entirely just on fun little ed tech tools you can use in your classroom. But I think the principles and technology we're going to be focusing on the HiTech Podcast, I believe, will be a little bit more widely applicable to all of you listening to the podcast from whatever background you're coming from. Because Will and I know we don't only have educators listening to the podcast. There have been a handful of people we know that are listening to the HiTech Podcast and have been for a little while that are not just educators. They're coming from a couple different backgrounds. And so for us, we want to start sharing what that information looks like, what that vibe is, how we do what we do, right? So like a very good example is the first series that's going to be coming up after this episode. It's going to be a long series, a 5-part series on...
We're going hard.
Yeah, we're going hard. We're leaning in hard. It's going to be a 5-part series on how to kind of work through anxiety and productivity in a really tech filled world, right? Like Will and I have noticed a lot of people, both in education and outside of education, who are stressed out in the way they're dealing with things and having a hard time keeping everything straight in this tech-fueled world. And very much so. We're all filled with screens. We have a lot of different things going on. I said filled with screens. That's probably not the way to put it. We're not filled with screens. We're surrounded.
I had 2 for dinner myself.
Yeah. We ate 2 for dinner, whatever that may be. But we want to talk a little bit about that. So that over that series, we're going to be sharing stuff that Will and I have started doing. And we don't have this all figured out. We're never going to have it all figured out. We are still just kind of sharing our journeys. And I think over that season or that series, you'll really pick that up. It's going to be us sharing our journey over the last year and how we've both leveraged personal practices to find some more sanity in this kind of crazy world and how to be more productive. And also just for our business, how we found some of those spaces out. So I think we're really excited to have all these conversations that we've wanted to be having, honestly, for the last year or so, that haven't really fit in the current picture of the HiTech Podcast. I think that's fair, right?
We've been feeling stuck in a little bit, not in a bad way. I feel like we didn't give up on it. We weren't just phoning it in. We got some really good quality content. The trip to FETC this past year was so cool. Met a lot of folks. We're still good with it. We're not ditching education. In fact, like I mentioned, we're going to go deep into an informal education project with our business. We're both pretty excited about work trying to do in that space. But this is the moment when we want to introduce to you. This is the episode to introduce to you the HiTech Podcast by Harness Tech. And if you want to learn more about Harness Tech and what we're doing in business, you can head over to harnesstech.us. Hey, folks, real talk, it's the cheap domain, but the HiTechPod.us is the website, right? And harnesstech.us is our business, where, again, we started this to try and make some money for the podcast and make this profitable and also make this easier to do, right? There's a lot of reasons why money and profit gets involved. It's not just to get rich quick. Like, it's like, hey, we spent money on this podcast that the business earned. So the business made some money. We hired Dadziner. Now the podcast looks and feels like this and has a cohesive brand that can be more appealing, more engaging for more audiences. Boom. We're investing in what we're doing. So we're trying to kind of get into these spaces to learn new things, right? Josh and I have had well, 3 or 4 kind of big projects and clients with this business, and each one has given us immeasurable lessons. I've learned so much about storyline and how to like tweak it and mess with it and do JavaScript with it and all sorts of crazy stuff that I frankly was not being challenged to do in other capacities. And so digging into it in those spaces have made me a better tech user, and we want to get into sharing those stories. Like, we're going to look at storyline. There's going to be episodes about articulate storyline and what it can do, what e-learning is, why it's useful in learning and development, why you could be using this in traditional education too. It's actually not used enough in traditional education. Storyline opens up a huge world of technical possibilities for educators. And we're not stopping. We're gonna touch all this stuff and really dig into it. This also means we are stepping further away from the free and freemium model. There's just too many tools out there that aren't free, but that are good. So we'll be trying to make sure you know what is and isn't free, but we're opening doors. We're going to step on all this stuff. And this is the HiTech Podcast, brought to you by Harness Tech. We've done it. We've made it to the new era. So that's a wrap. I'll stop. I'll just hit end recording. This will be the 20-minute episode,
right? Pause to highlight something real quick. It's the real development that's happened over the last couple of years. We've talked about all this other stuff, but the real development over this couple of years, I just want to highlight something. Okay. Will brought up this address, and I want to emphasize that he said harnesstech.us. He did not say US. I have won the argument. That's all I gotta say. If you were a long-time listener of the HiTech Podcast, you know for the first several years, Will and I would always argue on the podcast about, was it HiTechPod.us or HiTechPod.us? It was an argument, and he didn't even bat an eye.
You win.
He didn't even bat an eye. He said .us. That's all you need to know. I won. That's because I'm a petty person. That's what.
Well done. You win.
Yeah,
you win.
No, but in all seriousness, like, we're going to be diving into this stuff from a different level, and I hope even getting into more theory and stuff. We've talked a lot about on the podcast about instructional design and what that looks like, right? But honestly, Will and I haven't dove deep into topics of instructional design because we've been a bit more focused on just ed tech, and I think instructional design very much kind of connects with technology, because in many ways it's usually in today's world designing some kind of hybrid or online experience for people. And it's not just in higher education. It's happening all over companies. It's happening all over businesses. And I think more and more businesses and people could learn from instructional design on how to teach and develop employees and staff in a much better way. So we're going to be talking about all that stuff too. We're going to be talking about productivity. We're going to be talking about project management softwares and how to use that stuff and how to use principles of that. And Will and I will be bringing you practical screw-ups and successes from the Harness Tech company, because we have done both of them on dramatic scales. So we will talk about those and show examples. I'm really excited about the upcoming series we're about to do, because we're going to have some real practical examples for you of stuff to do, as well as actual templates and things that you can leverage from the Harness Tech, from HiTech, that you can actually take and use yourself if you're looking to do something on your own. So Will and I have been building up to this over the last couple of months through all the work we've been doing with Dad Designer and with Chris, our new social media manager, to tutorials we've been creating for things that are going to be coming with the new episode, to other cool stuff. And we'll still be having lots of cool experiences after that series. Steve Miletto will still be coming back as a joint podcast. So like, stuff like that's not changing. It's going to be super cool, where there's an episode where we might be doing some garage sale dumpster diving. You're curious how that's going to tie in. You got to listen to that episode. It's coming up on the HiTech Podcast. So we're going to be talking a lot about that stuff. But at the core, we are not changing, which is that we are about helping you leverage technology and practices that work in a modern tech day in your work, in your classroom, and whatever you're doing to help you be more efficient, to help you bring order out of the chaos that exists in your life and what you're doing. We will share places where we failed to do that, as well as places where we found some success or learned from other people. And we still would love to have people on the podcast who want to talk about that stuff, right? That has not changed. It will not just now be Will and I talking about stuff. We still would love to have guests. So if these are topics that interest you or you're interested in hearing about, make sure to still hit us up at inbox@hitechpod.us, right? We've talked about that a little bit. This is still the email to email us at if you're interested in coming on. Even if you're still from education, you're one of the people who've been on the podcast before, whether an app or a teacher, you have something that ties into technology and harnessing it and leveraging it to do something. We still want to have those conversations with you. We're not cutting those conversations out of the podcast. It just means kind of our scope and who we're looking to talk to is broadening a bit. So if these topics sound interesting to you, keep listening to the HiTech Podcast. If they don't, just put us on play and mute us so we still get those listens. But if you can,
thanks.
Thank you. But I'm super excited about this. I think this is something that really connects to both what Will and I are doing now professionally at this moment and trying to do with Harness Tech. We are hoping to kind of connect this into what we're doing with Harness Tech so you can get updates about what's going on with the company and you can learn from what we've been doing. If I've been experiencing anything, it's that it's in the moments that you're learning the stuff that's the best to kind of process it out loud, because everybody likes to tell you what they did 10 years ago as if it was super successful, but they don't really know what they did. So like our goal is to kind of document stuff out loud, to document it for you, and hope that you learn from it and also still have fun with us. The sarcasm, the banter, that's not going away. Will and I are still going to be having fun making fun of each other and possibly other people, however we feel about it. I don't know yet. But we will still be giving those hot takes and having fun with that in the episode.
And I think that there's maybe my last bit. I don't think we're going to go too much longer with this because, why, what's going on, who, where, this is all in place. Nothing too much to worry about here. It's just the point that there's still an altruistic drive for us. We love what we do. If there was no money in the world, this is what Josh and I would be happy to do, to help others and just do this, right? If we can make a buck doing it and make the podcast better and make a living doing this, awesome. I can't say that's not a great thing. We've done 152 episodes, 3 years of production for free, and we've loved every minute of it, and the podcast will continue to be free. We're just moving forwards into a space where we can make some business efforts, learn some things, share those lessons, and continue, even while doing that, to have an altruistic goal of supporting and serving educators and people alike who need competence, who need something more in their technological space, who could learn even something that saves them 10 minutes a day. Holy smokes, there's 365 days in a year. That's a lot of minutes you can save if we can give you a productivity tool that can improve that practice for you. So this is energizing. We have been giddy for weeks to show you all of this stuff. I'm so excited that you're starting to see this, and please go to the website, please go to the socials, please reshare so that this new refresh is out there for more folks. I think that's all I got, man. You got anything else?
No, I don't have anything else. I would encourage you, go check out all that stuff. Like we've shared a couple of times, go to harnesstech.us as well to go check out what's going on over there. We already have some demo projects and stuff up there. You can go check out if you're curious about some of the stuff Will and I have been doing.
What we're doing.
I encourage you to go check out, at the very least, the gamified e-learning that we created called the Smoothie Overlord. If that sounds confusing and ridiculous to you, it's correct. It is all of those things. But it's super cool. It's a super fun gamified thing. And honestly, probably on the HiTech Podcast here within the next couple, after the first series we're doing and the Leto thing, we will at some point be breaking down how we've done some of these projects, because we want some people to see kind of the back end of what we've done, and how we're leveraging some simple stuff like AI and storyline to create really cool experiences, stuff that kind of comes together in ways to look at stuff. So I'm really excited about where that's all going. I don't really have much beyond that. Yeah, go check that stuff out. Be prepped. We will be back next week with a awesome series, kicking off this productivity series. And I'm sure will be a huge surprise to you that one of our big focuses during that series is going to be how we've leveraged Notion. I know that's such a surprise to so many who hear that we love Notion. And specifically me who love Notion, but I will give you a little bit of a preview. We will be giving you a deep dive into some of the stuff I do personally in productivity. The new stuff we're setting up for Will. Will is joining me in the Notion world of productivity, so we're deep diving. But we're also going to deep dive a little bit in that series what we've done for the company. For the last year, we've been running, well, for the last 3 years, we've been running the podcast out of Notion, but we took it to a different level this past year where we've been running Harness Tech out of Notion. And we've run several projects, budgets, and different things out of Notion. And I'm really impressed with what we've been able to do over the last year.
Beautiful.
It's been pretty cool. And so we're going to be deep diving on how we've done some of that stuff in this series. So hopefully, whether you're running a classroom, running a company, just on your own, this series can help you kind of pick up maybe some tips and tricks on how to leverage tech and some practices to enhance what you're doing and bring a little bit of order out of that chaos in life and what you're doing. So I'm super excited. This is kind of a preview of what's to come. But other than that, I got nothing else.
Sweet. All right, folks, this is a wrap on another week. Empowering minds.
Embracing tech.
Cheers.